All right. Good afternoon. My name is Jared Duval, and I am so grateful to everyone for being here today as I announce my campaign to serve as one of your state representatives for Montpelier. I want to start by thanking Representative Connor Casey for his service to Montpelier and to Vermont. Connor has dedicated his life to public service and good causes, so I know it cannot have been an easy decision for him not to seek re-election. But what a contribution he has made. Representative Casey especially showed up for Montpelier in response to the 2023 flood. He played a key role in securing funding for recovery efforts and also worked to provide property tax relief for homes that experienced flood damage. And Connor has long been a champion for working Vermonters and for labor rights. I greatly appreciate that work and admire that legacy, and it is one that I am committed to working to continue. I also want to recognize and thank Representative Kate McCann, who has served in the State House since 2023. Here is what I know about Kate. She is a fighter with a big heart. She shows up for her constituents just like she shows up for her students. And I think it is especially important at this moment of challenge and uncertainty around the future of public education in Vermont that we have experienced and dedicated teachers like Kate as a key part of that policy discussion.
Hear, hear.
I am so glad that Kate, who has been recognized as a Vermont Teacher of the Year, is serving us not just in the legislature, but specifically on the House Education Committee. Representative McCann has also passed important legislation beyond the area of education, including Act 95 of 2024, which expanded insurance coverage and aligned Vermont policy with federal guidelines to cover additional cancer screening. And this year, Representative McCann sponsored H88, a bill to ensure that there are protections against utility shutoffs during heat waves, which is increasingly important as they occur more frequently. Thank you for that work, Kate. I also particularly want to thank my family for their support. My wife, Joan, our son, who is not here today because he's in school, and I'm also so glad that my mom, Alice, is here today along with my stepdad, Sam, and my sister, Juliet. And thank you all for being here today. Okay, I want to introduce myself a little bit. I grew up in the Upper Connecticut River Valley in the town of Fairleigh, and I first came to Montpelier as a kid in the late 80s and early 90s when we would visit my aunt, Ellen, and her family. They lived not far from here on Summer Street. In fact, my aunt Ellen used to work for the Vermont Historical Society, and some of my fondest childhood memories are of exploring the Vermont History Museum, which is right over there, with her and developing more of an appreciation for the history of our state. As a kid, I remember visiting my aunt and her family and walking in Hubbard Park, fishing in the North Branch, exploring downtown, and admiring the beauty and appreciating the friendliness of Montpelier. But having now lived here for over a decade, what has made me love Montpelier most of all is her people. So many of whom my wife Joan, our son, and I have been lucky to get to know as friends and neighbors over the years. We saw it in the aftermath of flooding, neighbors helping neighbors. I've personally seen Montpelier's character these past few winters as a frequent volunteer and founding board member of the Montpelier Emergency Cold Weather Shelter, because over 60 people from in and around Montpelier have been willing to stay up late, stay up overnight, get up early in the morning. We have been able to provide emergency shelter on the 44 coldest nights of each of the last 2 winters. We also see it in the churches and volunteers who ensure that every day of the week in Montpelier, a free meal is available for anyone who needs or wants one. We see it in the people who donate food and time at the food pantry, in the people who volunteer to read to kids at the elementary school or who do river cleanups. We see it in the work of numerous nonprofits, community-minded businesses, teachers and coaches, dedicated volunteers, and civically engaged residents. I could go on and on, but stated as simply as possible, this is what I know about Montpelier and her people. Montpelier cares, and Montpelier shows up. And that is why I would be so honored if you would entrust me with the responsibility to stand with you and to serve our community and Vermont as one of Montpelier's representatives in the legislature. I have to confess, I'm not a big fan of all that goes along with politics. But to me, politics is necessary. To paraphrase one of my heroes, the late Senator Paul Wellstone of Minnesota, the true purpose of politics is or should be about the improvement of people's lives. In short, I believe that politics matters because policy matters, and policy matters because people matter. When I was 10 years old, my father had a massive heart attack that nearly killed him. Thanks to paramedics who didn't give up on him, and after a quadruple bypass surgery, he survived. But after his surgery and with the damage to his heart, he was unable to continue his job as a chef. Without income during his recovery, he lost his apartment, his van was repossessed, and his medical-related debt would later force him to file for bankruptcy. Without a place to live, unable to physically continue as a chef, he ended up setting up at a flea market, buying and selling things during the days, and camping in a tent behind his table at nights. Eventually, he recovered enough that he was able to work again as a handyman and independent contractor and find an apartment of his own. Here's the thing. My father was one of the strongest people I ever knew, and I have never known anyone who worked harder than him. What his experience showed me is that even the strongest, hardest working people get knocked off their feet sometimes. And it's at those moments when we see how our government works and who it works for. It was only because of democratic policies, like Social Security disability insurance, that my dad didn't end up in a worse situation than he did after his heart attack. But he also should have been able to focus on recovery without losing his housing. And unable to work full-time in the job he had before, he should have been able to work part-time at another job without facing the benefits cliff and the prospect of losing his disability insurance altogether. I have a memory of my dad lying in his tent behind the flea market, the scars from his surgery visible on his chest, trying to fall asleep, but his eyes still open and looking up. I often think about how many Vermonters are facing similar challenges, laying awake and worrying about their ability to continue in their job, or whether their paycheck can meet their most basic needs in such a difficult and inequitable economy, worrying about where you will live and how much it costs to rent or try to buy a home. I believe that the test of political leaders is not how hard they work for the well-off. The true test of political leadership is how effectively we work for the working class, especially in their moments of greatest need.
Hear, hear.
And that's why I am running for the legislature, because I am committed to always looking out for and standing up with the working people of Vermont. Vermonters like my dad and Vermonters in the situations that I just described. Salt of the earth, hardworking people who deserve policymakers in the State House who will have their back and who will work to make things better when times are tough. That's why I believe in the need to preserve and strengthen a social safety net, to help catch families when they get knocked off their feet, often through no fault of their own. It's why I believe in the need to preserve and expand policies that give families a hand up when they need it most. And I believe that ensuring these things is a core responsibility of our government, led by the politicians who we elect to craft policy on our behalf. Again, politics matters because policy matters, and policy matters because people matter. And that is as true now as ever. because in the last year and a half, Vermont has learned the unfortunate truth that our federal government can no longer be counted on to lend a hand up. Rather, it's trying to kick us while we're down. Much of the funding Vermonters have historically relied on from the federal government has been cut by the Trump administration and the Republican Congress. Health insurance subsidies, Medicaid, food assistance, disaster recovery, transportation funding. The list is long. Let's take just one example, healthcare. With the expiration of federal credits at the end of last year, many middle-income Vermonters relying on the state exchange for health insurance faced a terrible choice. One, pay as much as $10,000 more a year for individual coverage, or $32,000 more a year for a family of four. Two, accept far worse coverage, or three, go without insurance altogether. In the face of these increased costs imposed by the federal government, over 2,500 Vermonters felt they had no other choice but to go uninsured. That is wrong, and we can change it. Additionally, an estimated 16,000 Vermonters are expected to lose Medicaid coverage due to federal policy changes, with an estimated cut of nearly $2.7 billion in federal Medicaid funding to Vermont over 10 years. It's a similar story with food assistance. As many as 40,000 households in Vermont could see their access to 3 Squares Vermont affected, with federal assistance for food assistance with SNAP benefits expected to decline between $7 million to $22 million a year. Those are some of the injuries. But here's the insult. With the passage of H.R. 1, the Trump mega bill, the top 1% of Vermont income earners are now set to receive an average annual tax break of $57,000 a year. That's the new equation. Cut vital services for those just trying to get by to pay for tax cuts for the wealthiest. Here's what I believe. Taking away food assistance and health assistance from those who need it to pay for massive tax cuts for the top 1% who do not need it is wrong. It is wrong. I believe this down to my core, and it is one of the biggest reasons I am motivated to run. Because Vermont doesn't need to just sit by and let this happen. We have the ability to recoup lost federal tax revenue from the highest income earners here at the state level and then reinvest it responsibly to help working Vermonters, including helping to maintain subsidies that allow people to retain health coverage and have food assistance to have some semblance of dignity. We are now faced with a federal administration or regime, or whatever term you prefer, that is marked by 3 things: chaos, cruelty, and corruption. The president and his appointees seem to have no sense of shame or responsibility. They treat empathy as a dirty word, and they see government as something to be raided and dismantled for private gain. Now, you might be asking yourself, why is a candidate for state rep talking about national politics? While it can sometimes feel distant, the impacts of Trump and Trumpism are felt strongly here in Vermont, and the ways that that onslaught diminishes our sense of possibility are all too present here too. I believe that the choice we all face in these difficult times is this: do we give in to the cynicism, the nihilism, the individualism, or do we decide to show up with and for each other? Do we decide to do what we can, where we can, and when we can? Do we decide to work for something better and more meaningful for the people and the place that we care about? I'm here today because, like you, I say yes to that work. Especially during these hard times and whatever, no matter what is to come. We're in this together. I'm running because I feel a deep sense of responsibility to try to do what we can together to make life better for our neighbors and our kids. All our neighbors and our kids. I spoke about history earlier, and I have to say that today I'm particularly aware of the family story of my fourth great-grandfather, James McLaughlin. He was a stonemason who immigrated from Antrim, Ireland to Montpelier in the early 1800s. He worked in the granite sheds here in Montpelier, and he helped work some of the granite that forms our State House. As I stand with you today, I want to share that it would be one of the greatest honors of my life if you were to entrust me with the responsibility to craft policy with and on behalf of working Vermonters from the State House that he helped build as a laborer. Because I believe that no matter the chaos, the cruelty, and corruption happening nationally, here in Vermont, in that State House, our government can and should be defined by this: competence and care for the common good. With elected officials who are guided by science and by reason, who listen to you and to each other, who honor our past while working to protect our future, and who have a rock-solid commitment to civil rights, the rule of law, and our democracy. I don't have all the answers. I don't claim to, and I don't pretend to. We face deep, complex, and interrelated challenges, and unfortunately, there are not many quick fixes. What I do offer is an open and a careful mind, a willing heart, and hands that are ready to help. And I bring a unique depth of statewide experience in economic and energy issues, as well as professional training in research and analysis. I will also rely on you to help inform my understanding of issues, to craft policy. And I know you will, because Montpelier cares and Montpelier shows up. Because the best policy isn't crafted for Vermonters, it is crafted with Vermonters. And in doing so, I commit to work with you with humility, an open mind, and with civility. I want to wrap up by saying something really important. I also know that effective public service, especially in the legislature, is not an individual exercise. It's a team effort. So another reason I am so excited to run is because Representative McCann and I work really well together, and because I believe we would make a great team for Montpelier. On the campaign trail, we plan to coordinate closely to host events, to meet and to hear from you, and if elected and re-elected, we will continue working together to do so, to respond to your questions and input, and to keep you up to date on what is happening in the legislature. I want to end by just thanking you again for being here today. I hope to have, or if I don't have it already, to earn your support ahead of the August 11th Democratic primary. And I hope you will also support Representative McCann, who I am very excited to campaign with and who I genuinely hope to serve alongside. With that, I'd like to welcome Representative McCann to say some words.
Welcome, Montpelier friends and neighbors. I'm excited to be here today to support the launch of Jared's campaign for state representative. As you know, state representatives are elected by and accountable to their constituents, in this case, the voters of Montpelier. But we should also remember that state representatives are responsible for all of Vermont. The legislature makes policy that affects all Vermonters, not just those living in our community. As your elected official and member of House Education, I'm proud of the work we're doing to approach chronic absenteeism, fund summer and after-school programming, protect our libraries and those who work in them, address students' mental health, advocate for historically disadvantaged youth and their families, hold the Secretary and Agency of Education accountable for the work they do and the data they collect and share out, support community schools, demand that publicly funded independent schools play by the same rules as our public schools, and push to increase income tax rates on the highest earners to help address economic and racial disparities. Thank you. Since you elected Connor and I in 2022, it's been a pleasure to represent you all under this impressive dome. I'm sad that Connor has decided to step down, No one has been a bigger advocate for labor rights, and no one has fought harder for flood dollars for this community and our neighbors in Barre than State Representative Connor Casey. With that said, I need a new dance partner. Jared's statewide experience with economic and energy policy research and analysis will be immensely valuable in the legislature. He has the experience of testifying in the legislature dozens of times as an invited witness on energy and economic issues, and has a strong understanding of how the legislative process works. Jared will be able to contribute in a meaningful way right from day one. As Jared's neighbor, I know him to be a kind and hardworking individual. We align on many of the major issues Vermonters are facing right now, such as improving the landscape of affordable housing, supporting more equitable education funding, and assuring quality health care is accessible and affordable for all. His work for the Energy Action Network and the Public Assets Institute has demonstrated his dedication to helping the community of Montpelier and Vermont at large. I look forward to campaigning with Jared all the way to November.
Thank you so much, Kate. And we actually have an unplanned but special guest speaker who stepped up at the last minute. I would like to welcome Kathleen Main to come up.
Oh, you want to hold it? Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thank you. It's nice to be here today on such a beautiful day with Jared and his family and all of his friends and supporters. When Jared ran last time, I had the honor of being his treasurer. So this is my second time launching a Jared Duval campaign, so it's super exciting. And I'm really pleased to be a supporter of Jared's. And what I would like to say during my small, short piece is that there's a ballot on the table over there, and if you're a Montpelier resident, please add your name so that Jared can be on the ballot. And the second thing is just to remind everyone that if you want to learn more about Jared, sorry, that's a huge thing to compete with. It's a granite moving through there. All right, so I'll try to talk loudly in here. If you want to learn more about Jared's positions and the issues that he'd like to support and about him personally, you can go to his website at jaredduvalvt.com. And moreover, if you'd like to make a donation to help support Jared's campaign, there's a QR code on the table, and all donations are welcome to help support this campaign. So thank you all for being here.